everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Bridging the Gap. My name is Marilyn and I am your host. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Silvia and she's from Mexico. She's currently earning her PhD in theoretical physics at Columbia University. Sylvia was my TA for the physics laboratory course I took spring semester of this year. In this interview, we really dive into her youth in Mexico when she was interested in STEM. We also look at her journey in her undergrad years, her graduate years, up until now that she's earning her PhD at Columbia in theoretical physics. If you're interested in STEM or just curious about the journey to earning a STEM degree, or if you're just passionate about physics, this interview is definitely one that you will really love to listen to. Definitely take a listen. And also, I will be uploading the audio version of this interview to Apple Podcasts. There's this really cool podcast out there called Bridging the Gap Maryland. Be sure to search it up on Apple Podcasts and you will find the audio version of this interview. I will also put the audio version of this interview in the description box below. You can just click on the link and it'll take you straight to the podcast. Be sure to subscribe over there. Okay, so enough of me talking. Now let's get into this exciting interview. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sylvia, on Bridging the Gap. Tell us a little about yourself and where you're from.
So hi, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Silvia and I'm a first year physics grad student at Columbia. I'm from Mexico, particularly from Mexico City. So I have lived in Mexico City my entire life and I moved last year to New York to pursue a physics PhD.
Yes. So obviously you're interested in physics and are currently getting your PhD. So I want to ask you, what fostered your interest in STEM at a young age, and how did your high school experience later help you narrow down your interests?
So I would say that I have always been a curious person. So, while growing up, my favorite activities would be to just do weird experiments in the kitchen or play around objects just to see how they worked, or to follow around my mom, just asking a lot of questions about everything. So I would say I always had this interest for science and for learning new things. So now I would say that I didn't think about learning physics or studying physics like seriously until I was in high school. So before that, my experience with physics had been like really frustrating, horrible, because my teachers were really into making students actually learn by heart the formulas and just like apply them on tests rather than to actually understand what was going on, right? So in high school, I had this like amazing teacher who actually tried to make us understand what was going on and to actually he tried us to actually think about the concepts and to actually understand, right? So that's when I kind of fall in love with the whole idea of like doing physics and math and doing research. And yeah, I would say that that's when I actually thought about studying physics.
Wow, that's an interesting journey. So you said you're from Mexico. Tell us a little bit about your experience growing up in Mexico and how you feel it helped to shape your upbringing.
So I would say in some sense, I really enjoyed growing up in Mexico City. I feel that it had the best of both worlds, one could say. So on the one hand, I was living in this large city that had a lot of opportunities for me. And on the other hand, I used to live in the south part of Mexico City. And so I in there you have a lot of open spaces, and back then insecurity was not a big deal in Mexico City, so I could just go outside and play and be a normal kid, right? So that was great. And let's say from a deeper point of view. Um, so Mexico, as I guess in other parts of the world, we really suffer from social inequality, right? And that's something that was, I would say, really evident to me since I was a kid. Because, well, in a school, you can actually get to realize how different, how your socioeconomical background can actually shape the opportunities that you later have in life, right? So I had friends who had to drop out, high school because they have to work to support their families. Um, I met brilliant students who didn't have the opportunity to just continue to the university, right? So I thought that that created in me a sense of, I guess, of responsibility, or I don't know, like just I realized how fortunate I was because I had a family that could support me. I had a family who valued education and who pushed me to follow my dreams, right? And so, yeah, I would say that shaped me in the sense that I always try to give my best, right? Because I'm just aware of how fortunate I was.
Wow. Yes. Yes. So then that brings me to my next question, which you already kind of touched on. So, what made you declare physics as your field of study in your undergrad years at the National Autonomous University of Mexico? So, you started off by studying neutrino and solid state physics, then finally transitioned to quantum optics. Tell us a little bit about this journey in your undergrad years.
Mm-hmm. So in Mexico, things are a little bit different in the sense that when you begin the university, you already have like a major, right?
Hmm.
So I decided to study physics since like year one. And at first, I decided to study high energy physics. So, all these things about like particle physics and the Higgs boson and things like this, simply because it was a really, really hot topic back then. So I was just crazy about like, oh, the Higgs boson and the, black holes and all these kind of things. And I would say I enjoyed it a lot at first. I have always been like really mathematical, so I have always been a theorist, right? So during my first years, I enjoyed doing like heavily like just doing math, sitting down at my desk and just doing math. Then in my last year of university, I had the opportunity to do an internship in Canada. And in there, I collaborated with an experimental group. Um, and then I discovered just how great it is to have this communication with experimental, right? So whatever you're working in your model, it's great, it's in your head, it makes sense. But then you go and you talk to the experimentalist and you discover that what you're thinking just doesn't make sense or it's not applicable to real life, right? So it's really an enriching experience. So when I came back to Mexico, I ran to just talk to theorists who had this like deep collaboration with experimentalists. And in particular, I found this amazing researcher back home. She's just amazing. I mean, she became basically my mentor, and she works in quantum optics.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say that's how I began my journey in quantum optics.
So afterward, what made you decide to pursue your master's degree after your undergrad years?
Um, so I would say it was this researcher I found back home. So I started working with her in my final years, and then the project I was working on, I didn't finish it during my undergrad. And since my long-term goal was to become a professor, then usually after the undergrad becomes, well, you need to study a master's and PhD, then do several years as a postdoctoral fellowship, like a fellow, yeah. And then you have to apply for a position to become a professor, right? So for me, it was clear like, okay, yeah, I have to do my master's. And then since I had this ongoing project, then I just decided to go for it, yeah.
What research work were you involved in on campus during your undergrad years, and how did this further shape your interest in your field of study?
So during my time at UNAM, I was focused on studying red rare atoms. Now, red rare atoms are highly excited atoms, right? And they are super interesting because they communicate a lot with one another, right? So imagine you have a bunch of these atoms in a space and they are communicating with one another. And then this creates really interesting collective effects that people can later harness to create amazing technological applications, in quantum information and all that sort of things. So then I began being like interested in red rare atoms, and then I transitioned a little bit to be interested in like these collective effects, right?
Mm-hmm. So, what clubs were you involved in on campus, and how did they help mold you into who you are? What aspects did you enjoy about each club you did?
So I would say one interest that I really explored while I was in at the university was language learning. So this was like really great for me because when I first began college, I was super shy. I couldn't even talk like in front of two or three people. It was just like, yeah, I was super scared of that. And I began learning languages. So, for instance, the first language I learned was Italian, which is like kind of close to Spanish. So it was really super chill. But then when I went to the advanced levels, I really had to start speaking, right? Because it was part of my grade. And so we would like do debates, for instance, and I really had to like speak. And I think looking in hindsight that really helped me to actually, start like actually speaking out my mind and just, yeah. So during my college years, I did Italian. I also did German and a tiny little bit of French.
Wow, that's awesome. So let's fast forward. After receiving your master's degree at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, you decided to pursue your PhD. What about Colombia drew you to want to pursue your PhD in theoretical physics at this particular institution?
So I would say the major thing that wanted me to come here to Colombia was my PI. She's she's amazing. I've had a lot of amazing people like guiding me in my career. So she's this young researcher focused on quantum optics and on collective effects. And yeah, I would say that the overlap of interest that we had was just amazing. It was yeah. So I would say that was the major reason. And then secondly, well, the Department of Physics at Columbia University is really strong. They have a really big community in condensed matter and in atomic physics. And those two are fields that we people working on quantum optics can collaborate with. So yeah, it was, I would say, an almost perfect fit for me.
So you were the instructor for my physics lab class, and you were very passionate about teaching physics. I want to ask you, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Oh, that's super nice for you to say. Yeah. So short term. So I'm currently working in two projects, right? Since we have talked a little bit about physics, I guess I can begin with my teaching project. So I'm currently trying to develop a mentorship program, right, for students in the south of Mexico. So this region in Mexico is really like close to my heart because my mom is from there, right? So we are talking about the state of Oaxaca. So this region has been, I would say, historically neglected by both our government and our society. So as a result, this area is a little bit less developed than the rest of Mexico. And then kids in there have less opportunity to pursue higher education. So one goal the ideal goal for this project would be to help these students to gain admission to our public universities, right? So yeah, this is still like in the really early stages, I would say. I have been talking to some people, some teachers, high school teachers back there. just to try to find like a middle ground between the things I could do and the things that they need. And then also like reaching out to different people from my university to see if they could serve as mentors. So that's like a first project that connects a little bit with what you said about like my passion for teaching, which is something I discovered too recently. And then the second project is about research, of course. So I will be spending my summer doing research and exploring collective effects in atoms next to waveguides, basically.
So this brings me to my next question, which you already sort of touched on. So what other interests apart from physics do you have and do you hope to explore at Columbia University?
Um, so I guess one of them is this language learning thing. I'm really excited because back home I could only find like a bunch of languages I could learn. So you could either find like French and German and kind of like the normal things, right? And over here at Columbia, I have seen like an amazing variety of languages I could be learning. So, for instance, in the fall, I was taking Chinese classes, which was just, yeah, it was super interesting. So, I would say that's something I will be doing more for sure. And while in Colombia, I also, um, I think that the other students at my department and the professors, they both share this passion for teaching. So they are like really involved in, they have like different mentorship programs or different ideas. So I'm really looking forward to collaborate with this great community I have. Uh-huh.
How do you structure yourself to achieve all of your goals? And what advice will you give others listening to or watching this interview who are interested in achieving similar goals?
Mm, so that's actually, yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I would say I have maybe two main advices for people who are interested in pursuing maybe a STEM degree or going to grad school. So the first thing I would say is really ask everything, ask as much as you can, right? Because at sometimes people feel scared about asking things. You think like, oh, okay, this question maybe it's like a little bit dumb. Maybe my classmates or the teacher is going to think that I'm a little bit dumb. That whatever. You should just go ahead and ask it. Like in the long run, it's going to be much better because if not, if you keep the doubts within yourself, then things are just going to grow and grow and grow. So then it's much better to take this approach in both your classes and I would say also in life. Just be intellectually honest with yourself, and if you don't understand something, then just go ahead and ask it. A second thing, and I guess this applies more to I guess both STEM students, but also pretty much every single student who is in a really competitive background, like or yeah, like Colombia, for instance. So you should really try to make your best, but at the same time, you should also take care of yourself, right? Because that's something that sometimes students don't really do. So you should take care of both your mental and your physical health. And one really good advice I received, and I just pass it on, is you should have a list of non-negotiable things, right? So things that you're not willing to give up, no matter how much work you have, right? So of course, this list is going to be different for different people. For instance, in my list, I have I need to sleep at least 7 hours per day, no matter what. And then I'm going to take the weekends off just to be with my family or friends or just to recharge, right? So those are the things that I will definitely be doing no matter what, right? So then that's a second advice. People should write this list and then just stick with it.
Yes, I love that. That's such great advice for people to follow. And then my last question for you, Sylvia, kind of a fun question. Are you currently working on any interesting passion project? I know you mentioned that you're working on something in South Mexico. And how do you look forward to spending your summer apart from doing research?
Mm. So I would say, well, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is, well, of course, New York is opening, Columbia is opening. So back when I was in high school, I used to swim a lot. So then I'm really looking forward to start swimming again, to have like a pool near, and also to explore New York, right? Because when I first arrived here, well, it was amidst the pandemics. And then I just feel that I don't really know the city I live in. And that's kind of weird because I have been here already for a year. So, so yeah, I would say I will focus both in my research and in this mentorship program I have already discussed.
Yes. Thank you very much for joining us today on Bridging the Gap and for sharing your story, your background, your journey, and your academic interests. We really appreciate you and come back again. Thank you so much, Sylvia.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, be sure to check out that really cool podcast called Bridging the Gap Marilyn, where you'll find the audio version of this interview. I'll also be sure to link it in the description box below. Be sure to check it out and subscribe over there as well. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so that you can be notified when I release future videos. Additionally, follow me on Instagram at bridgingthegap_Columbia Uni. I'll put it in the description for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. Peace.